quite a while ago I watched the official Affinity video on blend ranges. This was posted in January 2017, so I must have watched it roughly around then. And to be perfectly honest with you, I really didn't pick up on what was going on. It didn't really explain to me properly what what I needed to know. So I pretty much left blend ranges alone, and I've just sort of ignored them. And I did also roughly around this time I watched one by Chris P. Williams, which again was January 2017. It is a much better video in my opinion in for explaining what's going on, but it still left me a bit cold. And so I've pretty much left blend ranges alone. Now recently on a Facebook group, this is on it's not on YouTube, it's on Vimeo channel, but he posted a link to this Chris Stocker. Now this gentleman, he is a designer by trade as far as I can tell, and he is a Photoshop wizard, if I assume. But because the industry and customers and what have you are starting to use Affinity Photo, he had brought Affinity Photo and has been testing it. He doesn't really know his way around the program as yet, but he just wanted to test whether it was good enough for him to sort of get on with alongside his Photoshop work. And one of the options is comparing Photoshop's blend if options compared to blend ranges in Affinity Photo. And to be perfectly honest, I picked up more from this video than I did previously, and it did start me thinking about having a look at blend ranges a bit more. So now I knew that it was like a version of blend if. I did a search and I watched a Photoshop video for blend if, because I do find watching Photoshop videos on the whole a lot more interesting, and I pick up more from them than I do Affinity Photo videos. I really don't know why, but I do. And then I try and adapt a Photoshop tutorial for Affinity Photo. I know it's a backward way around of doing things, but that's the way I work. So the Photoshop tutorial I watched explained it sort of quite well to me as well, alongside this one. So I would advise you to check out these other videos. And I have also, if I come back to my history here, this was one of the Photoshop videos that I watched, which I found very interesting and taught me a lot. But I have also noted that there is an iPad version of the Affinity Photo blend. It looks at blend modes and blend ranges, and I've watched that as well, even though I don't have an iPad. Now this official video for the iPad explains blend ranges far better than the official one for the Mac and PC, in my opinion, probably because it's newer, so they've sort of updated it. So even if you don't have an iPad, it's quite interesting to watch this iPad version and pick up ideas and tips that way. So they're the sort of 4 main videos that I've watched recently. So let's move on with the actual look at blend ranges. Now this image I got from pixabay.com, as did another one I'm going to look at later, and there's one here with some flames that I got from some other free site which I can't remember at the moment. So what we're going to do is I'm going to get this flame image and I'm just going to copy it, and then I'm going to paste it onto this image. It's a very small image, it's up here. So let me just move this into position. I'm just going to put it around this chap's boot. Now I'm going to zoom in here. And I'm going to lower the opacity of this just so I can get an idea of positioning. Let me just rotate that slightly and put it about there. And I will raise the opacity back to 100. Now in the past, without blend ranges, what I would have done, I would have used blend mode. Now blend mode is from this drop down menu here, and I would pick a blend mode so that the flames would show through, and screen would have been maybe like color, but screen shows more of those flames, whereas light color you don't get so much. But what screen does, it takes away all the black that was in the background. So I would have then sort of maybe tinkered with the opacity to get the effect that I wanted. So let me bring it back to 100. Let me just duplicate this layer, and I'll put this back on normal. So that was what it looked like before I changed the blend mode, and that was what it looked like after I changed the blend mode. Let me just turn off that one. Let's rename this one blend mode, and then I'll rename this one blend range. So what I'm going to look at here is changing the blend range of this rather than the blend mode. Now to change the blend range, you need to click on this little cog that is next to the padlock up here, and it will open up this blend options divided into two squares, and each of these squares has a grid and a sort of line with two nodes running along the top. Now the grid is a representation of the sort of dark and light pixels in the image. So down this side on both grids is where the black pixels are, or the darker pixels. Down the right hand side would be the white and lighter pixels, and the middle line would be where the midtones and greys are. So this box on the left is the source layer. Now that is the layer that is highlighted, which is the top one here, and the underlying composition range in this box is the visible layers below the currently selected source layer. So basically what you're doing is you are turning off the visibility of the dark or light pixels in an image. So we'll start with the source layer. So if I drop down, click and hold and drag this down, what we're doing is we're turning off the visibility of the black pixels. So as you can see, it's a very similar effect to what I did with the blend mode using screen. I mean, you could also tinker with the lighter white pixels to get a different effect, and you can move this around and get all sorts of weird and wacky effects. You can also add a node in the middle, or 1 to 3 or 4 nodes, it's up to you, but you can say click in the middle and add a node, and then you can get different effects that way. So you have, although the screen blend mode gives you a pretty good effect, the only real option you have to alter in that effect is opacity, whereas using blend ranges you have a bit more ability to get a different effect altogether. There's also an option here at the moment. You've got a tick in linear, which basically just means it's going to be very straight lines. You know, the line will go from there and then down to there. If you untick that, the line is more curved, so the effect is not so sudden. It's more sort of a subtle fading effect. Now, sometimes it will work better in linear, and sometimes it will work better not in linear. It's a case of trying both. As you can see, ticking that on and off will slightly alter how subtle effect that is having. So if you click reset, it will just put everything back at the top where it was. So now if we look at the other side, the underlying composition, now what this will do is we'll make the visible layers underneath more visible through the source layer, whereas this one we were making the source layer sort of less visible. This one we're making the background more visible. So again, if I drop down the shadows or black, as you can see, the shoe is becoming more visible through the flames. And again, you can alter this and maybe drop some of that, bring some of the green through the black of that background that was there, but you are losing some of the flames. So you could maybe just drop part of the source. This is I think it's just a trick in blending and finding which works for you and what you want to achieve. So I'm going to reset both of those, and hopefully that it does explain to you that the difference between blending using the source layer or blending using the layers underneath. It's a case of trial and error, see which works best. Some images will work better using the source layer, and some will work better using the underlying layers. So let me just hide that, and then I'll zoom out again. And what I'll do is I'll just quickly add a new layer, and I'm going to add a gradient to this. I'm just going to quickly add a gradient across like that, and I'm going to change that grey end down to black. Let's come off the gradient tool. So we have our black down the right, our white down the left, and sort of greys in the middle. So hopefully this will demonstrate again sort of what I mean. So if I bring up the blending ranges, oh, wrong one, I'm moving. That's it. Let's move it down here. So again, if I drop down the dark black side of the slider here, as you can see, the black is becoming less visible, but the white is still staying strong. And because the line comes across like the mid-tones here, the mid-tones are being affected, but as they start coming nearer to the white pixels, they're becoming less affected, or the other way, going upwards rather than downwards like I did. But I hope you know what I mean by that. And if I do the other side, the white pixels become less affected, less visible, and the black will become less affected. And if I click in the middle, which will be where the mid-tones are, if I drag this right down to the bottom here, all like the mid-tone grey pixels are now not visible, and the white and the black are still at full visibility, so they are still affecting the image or the overall image left and right. If I just untick the linear so it becomes a more curved faded image, hopefully you can see the difference there. If I just tick that on and off, let me just reset that. So this time we're going to look at bringing the underlying image through the gradient. Again, it'll pretty much work the same way, but the effect will be slightly different, because it does sort of make it more like a drawing or water painting rather than the photograph like it did with the first using the source layer. So that gradient is still having a slight effect on the image, and then we just reset that and bring down the other side. So hopefully that demonstrates what I mean by whether you use the source layer or the underlying layers will affect the overall outcome. So it's best to sort of try both to see which works best for your particular image. And like I said, you can then tinker with this and get all sorts of different effects. Right, so let me hide that one. Okay, so next one I want to look at is it doesn't just work on sort of image layers, it will also work with adjustments, effects and things like that. So if I add an adjustment, let's say what should we try, HSL. What I'm going to do is I'm going to ramp up really badly this the effects of the saturation shift. It looks quite horrible now, but now there is also a cog on here to access the blend ranges for this effect adjustment, but you could close it and still go via the cog as long as this layer is the one that is highlighted. But I will do it from here. So like before, if I drop down this side of the source, let's move both of these off screen slightly, but I'll move that over there. So hopefully this will be visible. It's not always, sometimes it doesn't always work. You can see it is somewhere in this darker blue here that it's most visible, as you can see it working that general area over there. So that is with the HSL boosting at its full, and then that is knocking back the darker pixels in that adjustment. And if I bring down this one, it should drop back the lighter pixels. And it's probably this grass area that it's having the most effect, or visible effect, of where you've taken away some of the effect of that tool adjustment. Let me reset that one, and then we'll look at the underlying. Yeah, so that's a bit more noticeable, I think, in knocking back some of the effect of that HSL adjustment than using the source layer. So hopefully you see what I mean about tinkering with either the source or the underlying composition to find out what works for you and what you are trying to achieve. So that is an adjustment. So let me just close that, and I will hide that. So we're back to our original image. So we'll now have a look at using it with a filter. So what I will do is I will highlight this background image, and I'm going to duplicate this, and then I'm going to add a filter, and we're going to go with sharpen high pass. Now normally with a high pass sharpening I would probably only do somewhere between 2 and 4 pixels, but I'm ramping this up quite high, so hopefully we can, let's go a bit even higher still. We will see how much effect that has. So I'll click apply. So if I turn now I need to change the blend mode of this from normal. Invariably it's overlay, but it can be sort of pretty much any of these lights: soft light, hard light, vivid light, pin light, and linear light. I'll go with linear light because it's probably the most harshest and most visible one. So if I turn that on and off, that's the original, and that is with the high pass sharpening added. So now we're going to add the blend range. So again we'll have a look at taking out the darker pixels from that effect. So hopefully obviously the biggest white area in here is this gentleman's uniform, which is hopefully still getting the full effect of the sharpening. If I turn this on and off, hopefully that does show up quite well, and you could also drop this back down a bit in the mid-tones, so it's really only the white of his shirt that's getting the full effect of the sharpening, and hopefully the background area has gone back to being not as sharp, so it does make him stand out a bit more. Let me reset that one, and we will look at the underlying areas one here. Doesn't seem to be having too much visible effect as far as I can see, and same goes for the underlying. Oh, probably just help if I was on the right layer. And it's not visible, which is what I forgot to turn it back on again. This is one of the things of troubles with doing, especially tutorial videos where I've got to skip back and forward. Sometimes I forget to turn layers back on. So let's try that again. The underlying one, yeah, that's better. That is actually having an effect now. So similarly as I did with the source layer, the white area here is still showing that sharpness, and if I drop back the white range of the pixels, hopefully the uniform is now losing some of its sharpness, and it's the background that's a bit sharper. So let me reset that, and I will close that one, and this time I will hide this one deliberately, and then I will duplicate that layer again, and this time the filter I'm going to use is add noise, and again I'm going to use this is ramped up right up to 100, so I'll just click apply, and then add the blend range. So hopefully this time when I drop down the dark black pixel side of the box here, it will remove that noise from the darker pixels, and leave some of the noise in the lighter pixels and to a certain extent the mid-tones, and similarly if I go the other way, take the noise out of the light and to a certain extent mid-tones. The uniform will not have the noise in, but the noise will still be in the background, making it a bit blurrier. And let me just reset that one, and we'll have a look at bringing the underlying image through the noise. So that is the darker pixels. Again, a lot of the noise is now in his uniform and not so much in the darker pixels. And doesn't work quite as well as using the source layer to drop out the white and light greys from the noise layer. Like I said, it's a case of trying one or the other. Just reset that one, and again this time I'll just drop down the mid-tones, so it's knocking out some of the noise from the mid-tones and the lighter and darker middle range greys, but still leaving the noise in the whites and black areas. So hopefully that does explain a bit better, and that's how I understand it. I'm not going to sit here and say that everything I'm saying is 100% correct. This is just how I view it working. Probably someone out there will add a comment about how I got this wrong or I got that wrong, but this is how I see that working. Now one last thing, if I just bring back the HSL adjustment which I added earlier, which brought in a lot of colour, I'll bring back the blend range and I will just reset that to where it was, and I will you can look at various colours. Like at the moment it's set on master, which is like the whole image, but you can drop down here and you can pick red, green and blue. Now there is quite a lot of visible blue in there, so let's go with the blue option. Make sure I've got no other levels highlighted, and it is the HSL layer I am sourcing here. If I drop down this side now, it should, in theory, have sort of dropped back the darker blues. It doesn't. Well, it's dropped back the effect of the HSL darker blues. So I just turn that off and on. That is the original picture. That is where we are now, and that is where we were with just the HSL at 100%. And so you can see that blue balding, for example, is very bright at the moment. And if I drop this down, it's come a bit less bright, more dull. Again, you could add the midpoint here and move this around. As you can see, we're only really affecting the blues in the image. Let's put this back to reset. Let's go with the green. Obviously we've got the green in the grass here, so I'm going to drop that down, so the HSL is having not such a big effect on the green area, but it's still having its effect on the blue and red areas. So again, you can drop this or raise this depending on what you want to do. So I'll reset that one and we'll have a look at the red. Obviously the biggest red area here is this earth mound, but we'll have a look. Yeah, so you got the orange. There's also some red in the grass, I think, as well, but hopefully you can see that how that is affecting the image just by raising or lowering the darks or lights. Let's have a look at the underlying image here, taking the lights out of the image. Yeah, so using the underlying image, I've removed a lot of the red from the white and sort of mid-tone range, and the red is only really in the darker tones, but the HSLL adjustment is still having its effect on the blues in this image. So if that was what you were after, you can use that tool and the blend ranges. Hopefully that does explain, not too boringly, how blend ranges work, and hopefully I've got it right. Now I'll just come to this last image here, which I got from pixabay.com, and I want to look at using text now rather than images and effects. So I'm just going to come to artistic text. I've got it set on white, which is what I want, and let's just type hello, and I will just reposition it. Let's reposition it down here. Right, so I'm happy with that now. So again, like before, if you click on the cog for the blend ranges, let's move this up, let's move that over there, and that there. So again, it's the same thing. You've got source and the underlying layers. So if I drop down the black or dark side of this grid, it has absolutely no effect, because obviously this is all white. There is no black in there for it to have an effect with. So if we bring down the white pixel side of this, as I drop this down, basically all you're doing is lowering the opacity, because you are making the white less visible or more visible. This is where using the source layer really has no major advantage, because the source layer is only one color. So this is where we need to use the underlying layer, and again, you probably won't have too much effect using the black pixels. It is just allowing, let me zoom in slightly, those darker pixels to show through and give you the texture of the underlying layer through the white text. Let me just bring this back up, and again, if I bring down this side, you're just really changing the opacity. So again, I'll drop this side down, and then I can add this node in the middle, and I can just bring back or increase the amount of white that is visible, or how much of that text is going to be showing through the grain, or the grain is showing through the text. Let's take this off of linear a second and try it that way. It's probably slightly better effect. Right, let's Let's leave that there for a second. And I'll zoom out again. Right, so hopefully you can now see that let's come off the move tool. You can see that the effect, you can see the grain coming through the white text a bit better. And if I use the move tool and move this around, as it comes over a dark area, like this notch here, that will have, the desired effect. And you can still tinker with this, and maybe you don't want that to show through so much. And it's a case of finding an air. Oh God, what went wrong there? Let's reset that and try that again. Yeah, a case of just finding a look that you are happy with. Right, so again we're still on the move tool, so I can still move this around. So it may work better with different options in different parts of the image. Depends on what you are after. So let me get rid of that and that. So I mean, obviously we've now lost some of that. So, but you could always duplicate that layer and then maybe change the blend mode. We've got a soft light. Yeah, so you can see some of the texture of the wood showing through the text. Now, obviously, I've not really mastered that part of that quite well, but hopefully you get the idea of what it is I was trying to do. But if I just group those two together, I can move those around, and hopefully you can see what it is I was trying to do. So hopefully this will show you what I have learnt so far. If I've got anything dramatically wrong, I apologise, but this is how I understand it. So thank you for watching, and goodbye.